Hey everyone, this is Pat with Infinite Fitness, and today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about how to build a balanced plate for fat loss. Now, before we get into things, I want to give you a little bit of background on myself. So I own a gym in Bristol, Connecticut called Infinite Fitness. I have been a strength and conditioning coach for almost 10 years. In about a month, it will be my 10-year mark in the strength and conditioning industry. And I have been a certified nutrition coach for the past 5 years. And in that time, I've seen a lot of barriers arise with my clients when it comes to building a balanced plate. And I figured that the tips that I'm going to share in this video are going to be really helpful for anybody that is struggling to see the fat loss results that they're looking for. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So this video is going to be really beneficial for two scenarios. So in my time as a nutrition coach, I've seen two common scenarios arise with people that are struggling to lose fat. Scenario number one is the person that says, I'm barely eating anything, I just can't lose weight. And scenario number two is the person that says, but I eat so healthy, I just can't seem to lose weight. Now, we're going to cover both of these in depth throughout the video in certain ways. But before we actually get into building a balanced plate and what it should look like, I want to cover both of these in detail as to why they can be barriers, right? So number one, the person that says, I just don't eat anything, I can't lose weight. Well, there's a reason why that doesn't work, okay? And here's what that is. Your body needs a certain amount of energy to survive. And if you dip below that amount of energy to survive, your body has processes in place to prevent you from severely undereating, right? So let's say that you try to skip meals to lose weight. That might work for a short period of time, but the problem is your body is going to revolt against you because you're not feeding it enough nutrients, and it's going to make you overeat in the future. Now, how far in the future that may be really depends on the person. It might be immediately, it might be a few months down the road. The other camp of people that say, hey, I barely eat anything, but I can't lose weight. Now, those are typically your snackers, right? Those are people that are just snacking all throughout the day, and they're not really eating any meals of substance, right? Now, the reason why this doesn't work is your body needs a certain amount of nutrients to be full, right? And so that can be things like protein and vegetables. And typically, when someone is snacking throughout the day, their eating becomes very unbalanced. Either they're not getting enough fiber or they're not eating enough protein. And so that can become a problem. Now, the other side of the coin are people that say, I eat really healthy and I can't lose weight. Now, I'll be honest with you. If you are eating healthy, that is great. You've already taken the first step towards fat loss. But eating healthy does not mean that you are going to immediately lose weight, okay? What it means instead is that you've taken the first step towards weight loss, but eating healthy doesn't guarantee that you're going to lose weight. Now, losing weight comes down to something else entirely that we're going to get into in this video. But if you are eating healthy, what I will say is that fat loss becomes a lot easier than if you're eating a ton of processed food every single day. Now, before we get into exactly what you need to do to build a balanced plate for your fat loss, the first thing that I want to explain is what creates fat loss in the first place. So I'm sure that you've heard the common phrase, well, fat loss is created by calories in, calories out. And this is 100% the truth. You have to give your body less energy than it needs to cause it to liberate stored fat, which creates weight loss and fat loss, right? So typically the calories in, calories out, which is very important for fat loss, is important. Now, if we go back to the concept that I talked about a couple minutes ago about people that say that they eat really healthy and they still can't lose weight. Even though you're eating healthy, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you are in a calorie deficit. And in order to lose fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit. So the reason why eating healthy precludes fat loss is it's much easier to restrict calories when you're eating foods that are going to keep you full throughout the day. So if you have a diet high in protein, if you have a diet high in vegetables, these are obviously very minimally processed foods, and they're gonna make it easier for you to lose weight, and we'll talk about why later on in the video. But that doesn't guarantee that you are in a calorie deficit. And so what we're gonna be talking about today in the context of building a balanced plate is how you can successfully put yourself into a calorie deficit by building your plate to be a certain size. Now, the reason why I decided to talk on this topic is I have a lot of clients that I work with that would ideally, they tell me, hey, I wanna start tracking my calories. And if we look at the research around tracking calories, the research shows that calorie underreporting or misrepresenting the amount of calories that you're eating per day generally tends to fall between as little as 13%, but still an underestimation of 13%, all the way up to as much as 75% underestimation of what is getting eaten. And so there is definitely a learning curve with tracking calories. Now, this method of using a balanced plate is not a perfect method by any means, and you're probably gonna have to do more research than just this one video to get to where you wanna be. But building a balanced plate, I think, makes it simpler because you can look at your plate and say, okay, these are the accurate portions that I need to succeed with fat loss. So without further ado, let's talk about what that plate should look like. So, let's talk about what a balanced plate should look like. Now, what I want to explain to you is that not all plates are created equal. Obviously, this plate is far bigger than this one. So, this method may not 100% work if you're eating off of massive plates, because what we're trying to do here is, with weight loss, we're trying to reduce the overall portion sizes of what you are eating. And so this goes back to the concept of eating healthy is not enough. It's still very possible to overeat eating healthy foods. It's just a little bit harder to overeat eating healthy foods, but it doesn't mean it's not impossible. Now, obviously not all plates are created equal, but let's actually get into what your plate should look like if your goal is to lose fat. Now, as we go through this video, I want you to understand that this video is more conceptual. Every person is going to have their own unique needs. Obviously, a 200-pound man is going to need more calories than a 130-pound female, assuming their activity levels are the same. So if we take a look at this plate, let's break down the concepts of this plate. We have three things that we're seeing on this plate. We have protein, we have carbohydrates, and we have vegetables. Now, the thing that I want you to pay the most attention to is the portion size of each type of food that is on the plate. The protein is taking up about 1/3 of the plate. The carbohydrates are taking up slightly less than 1/3 of the plate, and the vegetables are taking up about half of the plate. Now, let's talk about why these things are put on the plate in each of these unique portions. So number one, protein. The reason why protein is taking up a good portion of this plate, obviously not the biggest portion, but a good portion, is the fact that when you are trying to lose fat, your body perceives a calorie deficit as starvation. So it's going to try and diet off whatever tissue it can diet off in that process. Protein needs are slightly higher when you are losing fat as opposed to when you're not. So having a larger portion of protein is going to make it less likely that your body is going to diet off lean mass. The second thing is protein is a very satiating food. What satiating means is it means it fills you up and it keeps you full for a long time. It fills you up and keeps you full mainly because your body has to work really hard to break protein down. The second thing I want to talk about on this plate is the vegetables. The vegetables are taking up half of the plate. The main reason why this is vegetables provide two things. One, they are a low calorie, high fiber food. Not all vegetables are super high in fiber, but most sources of vegetables are going to be low in calories and higher in fiber than other types of foods. Why does this matter? When you are in a calorie deficit, again, your body perceives this as starvation, and your body has processes in place to fight against you losing fat. Now, the reason why this matters is, let's go back to the example that I used before about people that say, I just don't eat anything and I can't lose weight. The reason why this doesn't work is your body is very smart at getting you to eat. So if you don't feed yourself adequate calories or adequate portions throughout the day, your body feels like it's starving and it ramps up your production of ghrelin hormones, which is going to make you hungrier throughout the day, and it's going to force you to eat. Now, part of the problem with this is that we live in a society where you are surrounded by high-calorie foods at all times of the day. So your body will get cravings, and it's very hard to ignore those cravings when you're surrounded by food all day. Vegetables are here to fill your stomach. So when you're eating a portion about this size, this is a relatively good portion of food. A large portion of it is the vegetables. And so vegetables are going to play a vital role in keeping you full between meals. Now, the carbohydrate portion. Some people might argue with having carbohydrates on a plate, saying that, if you eat carbohydrates, you can't lose weight, et cetera, et cetera. The reason why I chose to include carbohydrates in this video is, number one, most people eat carbohydrates pretty regularly. Now, the second thing is, if you look at the research, your body is going to feel the most satisfied when it eats a balanced meal. And a balanced meal is a meal that includes all types of macronutrients: protein, carbohydrates, fiber, healthy fats. Now, the one thing that you won't see on this plate is you don't see any types of added healthy fats, like almonds or anything like that. The reason why I didn't add any healthy fats to this plate is usually fats are going to get added in the cooking process. So if you're making potatoes and you're baking them, there's a good chance you're going to put olive oil on them. If you're cooking chicken in a pan or baking it, there's a good chance that you're going to put olive oil on it or something along those lines. So the reason why I didn't add any extra added fats to this plate is, most likely when you are eating a plate that looks like this, there are going to be added fats already added to it. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out in this video is the portion of the plate that is being occupied. Now, this is a pretty small plate. It's not a huge plate. I would say it's definitely on the more small to medium size type of plate. And I'm going to transfer the food over to this one so you can get an idea of what it looks like. But notice how this plate isn't filled to the complete edges of the plate. It's probably about 80% full. The other thing that we want to talk about when we're talking about calorie restriction is, the smaller that you can make your meals within reason, the more likely it's going to be that you're in a calorie deficit. And so going back to what I had talked about earlier with like the vegetables and the carbohydrates and the protein, you have to feed your body enough throughout the day to keep it full enough that it's not going to revolt against you and force you to overconsume. So having a properly balanced plate and also an adequate portion of food will be enough to allow your body to lose weight, but not too little where you'll be ravenously hungry throughout the day, every single day. And this makes fat loss much, much easier. So as I transfer this food over to this plate, and it's definitely not going to look as pretty after I transfer it over here, so bear with me. But notice how it's obviously occupying a much smaller space on this plate. So the other thing that you want to consider when you're building a balanced plate is the size of your plate. If you eat off of massive plates, your portions should be a little on the smaller side. If you eat off of smaller plates, your portions might occupy a little bit of a larger space on that plate. So now that we've talked a little bit about this plate method, let's talk more about how you can implement it and allow yourself to lose weight. Now here's where we're going to put everything together, right? The big picture. So now that you've seen what a plate looks like, you understand how fat loss works, and we've talked about the different types of macronutrient groups, everything like that. Now it's time to put it all together. How can you actually make this work for you, okay? Number one is to eat a minimum of 3 to 4 balanced plates per day. Now, if you're eating 4 balanced plates of food per day, those balanced plates are probably going to need to be a little bit smaller than if you're eating 3 balanced plates per day. The other concept that I want to explore is, obviously, for most people, you're not going to eat chicken, green beans, and potatoes for breakfast. You might, but a lot of people don't operate that way. What I want you to think about when it comes to each of those food groups is those are simply concepts. So if you're eating breakfast, you could have something like eggs, peppers and onions inside of the eggs, and oatmeal on the side, or cream of wheat, or something along those lines. The portion sizes would be around the same. The other thing that I want to cover is snacking. So when you are trying to lose weight, one of the things that I believe makes it much more difficult is if you're snacking throughout the day frequently. Now, obviously, a lot of people are going to need some kind of snack or maybe a sweet treat in their day to get them through the day. So I'm not saying that you can't snack at all if you're trying to lose weight, but what I would try to do is I would try to minimize those snacks. Maybe try to have one, maybe tops 2 snacks per day, and make sure that you are balancing the total amount of calories that are in those snacks. You don't want to have, 500 calories of Reese's peanut butter cups. That probably is going to fight against your fat loss goals. But if you had a 100 calorie frozen fruit bar, that might be something that would satisfy your need for a sweet treat and also help you hit your fat loss goals. So think throughout this process, everything in moderation. Now, the last question that I want to answer is, what happens if you're following this method and it's not working, right? So if it's not working, what's most likely happening is that your portion sizes are too big, assuming you're not copiously snacking or picking at things throughout the day. So if you're thinking about, if you're following this process and you're not losing weight, the first thing that I want you to look at is, am I snacking in between my meals? Constantly. Or picking at things, right? Picking at a chip or picking at a bowl of nuts in the office or whatever it may be. If the answer to that is no, then what that means is that your portion sizes probably need to be reduced a little bit. I would recommend, if that happens, try reducing the portion size of your carbohydrates first, because that is going to be the least satisfying and highest calorie object on your plate. If that doesn't work, try reducing your vegetable and protein portions ever so slightly until you start to see that movement. Now, the last thing that I want to cover is, how do you know if you're losing weight or not? If you are weighing yourself on a scale, one of the things that you might see is that your weight constantly fluctuates up and down and up and down. This is a very normal concept and something that happens as you are, just being a human, that's going to happen. Part of the reason for this is fluid retention. So if you eat later at night or you have a higher carbohydrate meal, your weight might go up. Sometimes your weight goes up for no apparent reason whatsoever. The goal is that over time, your low weigh-ins get lower and your high weigh-ins get lower. So if you weigh yourself on a Monday, 1 week, and let's say you weigh 200 pounds, and you weigh yourself on a Monday the following week and you're 201 pounds, and you weigh yourself the third week and you're 198 pounds, there's a very good chance that your weight is slowly coming down. You're not going to see every weigh-in be perfect. So anyway, that is our video for today. I hope that you all got something out of it. If you did, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, you can find us as Infinite Fitness Bristol, and on Instagram, you can find us as IF Personal Training. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay strong.